Let's bring in our political contributor, Chris Uhlmann now. Interesting from a couple of comments there from voters. A young woman at the end saying that Peter Dutton, the prices of everything will go up. It seems to repeat almost word for word some of the Labor campaigning. I don't know whether via TikTok or Instagram or wherever that voter had picked it up, but certainly they've been targeting the younger demographic with some of those messages as well, Chris.
Yeah, no, I think this is where sometimes we miss what's going on underneath the surface, and that's certainly on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, where most people now are actually getting their news. And I think the Labor Party is very, very good at using those sorts of mechanisms. And it seems to me throughout this entire campaign that the Liberal Party, the coalition, has been reasonably flat-footed. And on the Trump stuff, well, you've got to feel for Peter Dutton in one sense. It's something you can't have any control over. Trump has completely dominated the news cycle throughout the course of this election campaign. And you can map, in fact, the loss of support for the coalition throughout the time that Trump came to power from January, and then particularly since the tariffs. And it would appear he's caught in a bit of a wedge there, Kieran. He's too Trumpy for some and not Trumpy enough for others.
Yeah, very good point. And that was so interesting. That lady came up to us and I said, who do you prefer, Albanese or Dutton? She said, Dutton's too Trumpy, and went on about it for a while, actually. So made a few points on immigration and so on. So it's something that's definitely being picked up by some voters. I want to play, Chris, something that you raised with me for our viewers. This was an Instagram post by Dan Repicoli, the member for Hunter, and it was a comment that maybe, again, has gone under the radar a little bit, but in the regions, Labor's really trying to capitalise on this. Have a look.
The other point I'd make is if you look at an area like the Hunter or really any coal mining area, their jobs and that industry, that town is done.
Peter, wake up to yourself. If you spent more time in the Hunter and less time at Sydney cocktail parties, you'd understand that this Hunter area is thriving. I got Matt here from Mount Arthur. What do you reckon about these comments, Matt?
I think the comments are horrible, mate. If the place is done, I better go home right now, hack my house up, move my family out of their area, because it's not happening. We've got ages to go and we'll be going for a long time.
This bloke thinks he wants to run the country. You're going to respect areas like the Hunter, and that's purely what you have not done here. Come on, Peter, wake up to yourself.
Yeah, so Chris, how's that playing out in the regions like the Hunter?
Really, really badly, and this is where the Labor Party again has done a really good job on picking up on one part of something that Peter Dutton has said. Of course, he was trying to make the argument then as to the fact that that's why he needs to have a nuclear plan for those regions. But I'd say two things. Those regions are not done, not by any stretch of the imagination, because they're going to need metallurgical coal for a very long time, and the coal that comes out of New South Wales as well, that thermal coal. So saying something like that has really gone down very, very badly in those regions. Of course, they're regions that the coalition is targeting. So it's a sign of really good campaigning by the Labor Party, picking up on something that Dutton has said, not using it in the cities, but using it very specifically in the regions. And from what I have heard, it's doing damage to the coalition. Yeah, well, that's, as you say, targeting a specific comment, but really capitalising on it with that efficient messaging and campaigning on not the traditional media platforms. And I did find it fascinating when that young woman raised almost word for word that the Labor ad where they say Peter Dutton will cut, you will pay, that he's opposed to all of their cost of living relief. They've turned the negative, Chris, into a positive in some respects with some of that cohort by the looks of things. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we have to stop thinking about the way that the media works in old terms, which I think a lot of people still do. Most people now do not get their information from the kinds of places where you and I get it from, for example. And I sat through Peter Dutton's press conference then, I've sat through Anthony Albanese's. Most people aren't seeing any of that. What they're getting is the tips of icebergs that are being sent around social media platforms, and they're forming their opinions based on that. If there's some big event on the campaign trail, they may clock into it, but mostly now it's things that they're sharing among themselves or things that they're being directed to. And the parties that win that argument, that are largely we can't see on individual Facebook pages, on groups, on messaging apps, they're the ones that are getting cut through. Now, just finally, the second debate tonight on the ABC, the polling has Labor ahead, the coalition primary down to 35, 34. Worrying times for them when you've got Easter and Anzac Day weekends coming up. I just, they're going to have to turn something around and quick.
Yeah, look, someone said to me in the Labor Party before this election campaign began was that they thought that Peter Dutton had not done the work, that the coalition had not done the work, and that would show up during the election campaign. It appears that that is the case at the moment, because all the policies that they want to get people to latch onto have now hit the holiday season. So I don't know that most people would even actually know what the messages are at the moment. There are a lot of noise feeding into this particular campaign. Look, the coalition's going to have a blinder in the last 2 weeks if it's going to turn these things around. I know that people keep telling me that there might be a different story in the marginal seats, but if you're just looking at the polling that we can all see, and that's the mainstream polling, the coalition is heading in the wrong directions. And you cannot be losing policies and politicians and the polls and expect to win a general election.
So is it, but you know, just to drill down into that, is it the lack of grunt work, basically? Is that what you're saying? Because
yeah,
I do remember,
absolutely think
Tony
so.
Abbott, people would say that there's a comparison, but he was out day in, day out, well before campaigning, on a daily basis, making his point, relentless. It just doesn't seem it's been the same level of tempo, so to speak, with Peter Dutton.
And the messaging, remember with Tony Abbott, people used to mock the slogans that he had, but don't forget, he lost an election in 2010 very narrowly and then won one in 2013 by a landslide. But what happened between 2010 and 2013 is through 2 election campaigns, his message did not change. He had 4 or 5 points, remember, that we used to almost be able to say ourselves. It was his mantra, but he kept hammering it day in, day out. And there were policies to back that up. And don't forget Operation Sovereign Borders, that was a big deal. They had actually thought that through. Jim Moylan had done an enormous amount of work on that. So there was legwork behind the slogans as well. And the feeling I get, and I know it will be disputed, is that there wasn't really any policy grunt over the course of the last 3 years, that this coalition believed that it would get to government on the basis of the fact that everyone would decide that Anthony Albanese's government was bad. Well, if you move into the shadow, as they've done at the moment, of what you consider to be a bad government and copy all of their policies, or most of them, attempting to shadow it into government but saying we're going to be better than they are, what kind of message is that? You're not really differentiating yourself.
Chris Uhlmann, thank you as always. I'll talk to you next week.